Let's go. All right. Okay, so hi everyone. So today we have Professor Leticia Cunqueiro Mendez, Associate Professor at Sapienza University. Leticia received her PhD in theoretical particle physics from University of Santiago de Compostela. She then joined the ALICE collaboration as a postdoc, first at INFN National Laboratory of Frenscata, and then University of Santiago, before becoming a CERN fellow and then a CERN project associate at University of Munster. After that, she was a staff scientist at Oak Ridge National Lab, where she held a joint research assistant professor position at University of Tennessee and Oak Ridge, based at CERN. After over 10 years with ALICE, she joined CMS as a PI of an ERC Consolidator grant, first as a researcher at École Polytechnique, and now as an associate professor at Sapienza University. While in ALICE, Leticia held many roles within the collaboration, including conveners of the Monte Carlo and Jet Analysis Group, run coordinator for the TRD, and finally, deputy physics coordinator. Additionally, she is a member of the PS and SPS Experiments Committee at CERN and the RIC AGS Program Committee at BNL. On a more personal note, I was very, very lucky to have Leticia as my mentor when I joined ALICE as a postdoc. It was a pleasure to work with her, and I owe most of my jet substructure knowledge to her. Leticia is a leading expert in jets and their substructure, so it's really great that we have her here today to talk about jet substructure, the Lund plane, dead cone effect, and other QCD effects. Yeah, so Leticia, please go ahead and get started whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Laura. So you can tell that Laura is my friend, right? For your nice introduction. And so shall I remove that?
You can minimize the Zoom if you just hit the minus.
Yeah. Here?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about substructure, how we use substructure in proton-proton collisions and also in heavy ion collisions, and how we use it also in order to understand the role of the quark masses in vacuum and also in medium-induced radiation. So I'll start with a very...
Oh, you might need to click on the slides. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
There. So I'll start with a very general slide because I understand that the audience is varied. So about jet substructure. So you know that jets play a central role at the LHC. So they are elementary ingredients in every almost every analysis at the LHC and at WIC, of course. So jet substructure exploits not only the jet object as a monolithical object, but exploits its internal radiation pattern and with many scopes. And this is a little sketch.
Leticia, sorry, just to interrupt really quick, we had a couple of people on the chat request that you are closer to the microphone. Maybe we can move the owl a little closer or something.
So this is better now?
That's a lot better, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was saying that this is, okay, thank you. So this is a little sketch that describes several of the applications of jet substructure. So you see tagging of boosted objects, the tune of Monte Carlo generators, QCD precision phenomenology, and then a recent or relatively recent subfield, which is the field of heavy ion collisions. And so in this talk, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm just going to describe a little bit the iterative declustering techniques and the Lund plane, with a focus on the dead cone effect. So really the effect of the quark mass in the jet fragmentation. And then a brief status of the searches of quark mass dependent jet quenching in heavy ion collision, and then a few ideas on that matter. So jet substructure using the declustering history. So what does it mean? It means that instead of finding your jet and then looking at the hadrons that are their constituents, we try to reconstruct a hierarchical jet tree. So we try to order the jet trees so that it reflects the way that the initial pattern fragmented. And for that, you need an algorithm. And the usual algorithm that is used is the Cambridge-Ahern algorithm, which is a simple one. It's an algorithm that it clusters particles that are closest in angle first and particles that are farther in angle last. So it's a sequential algorithm that combines particles in this way. And here you can see, if I see here, nobody will see me. And people outside will see my finger or not really? No.
Somewhat, but not really.
Okay. So well, you can see the diagram and
you can use the mouse too if you like that.
I can use the mouse.
They will be able to see the mouse.
Okay, so this is a sketch of a parton, of a quark or a gluon that emits a gluon. This would be this first red line with number 1. It continues to evolve and then loses virtuality by emitting another gluon, and then gluon number 3, and so on and so forth. And then it continues fragmenting until it reaches scales of harmonization. So virtualities of the order of lambda QCD. So if you then find your jet tree in your measurement, then what you do is you your jet, you find your jet, and then what you do is that you use the Cambridge-Ahern algorithm, and this algorithm will pack these 2 particles here first, then it will pack this prong with prong number 3, then will pack together this cluster here with number 2, and then last this prong here with the firstly emitted particle. So what happens is that in the end you end up with an angular order structure, and this is very convenient because we know that angular ordering is a property of a vacuum shower. We know that angular order is a quantum property of our jet showers, of our QCD fragmentation. So then the idea of the clustering is that you want to undo what the Cambridge-Ahern algorithm has done, and then you undo the clustering. So you start with the 2 prongs that were clustered last, and then you separate them. So you have set 1, and then you have the rest of the prong. Then you go to the next step, and then you do the undoing. And each undoing you do for the hardest prong at each step. So at each step, you have 2 subjects that are obtained, J1 and J2, with PT1 larger than PT2. And then you can register the kinematics of these 2 prongs, their transverse momentum, the momentum balance of the 2, and their angle. Okay, so all this procedure, this iterative undoing of the clustering history, you can do it until a special substructure is found, until you find a splitting that satisfies a certain condition. That's called grooming in general, or you can really do it till the end, which essentially is when you end up with a single particle, when you have a prong that's a single particle and has no parents that it's split it onto. And this is the idea behind building the Lund plane. Really, the clustering everything until you register all the kinematics of all the clustered prongs. Grooming, as I said, you just decluster until you find a given condition. And classical conditions are the ones given by the mass drop or the soft drop grooming on the left, which essentially were designed in order to clean up your jet of soft and large angle radiation, mostly due to the underlying event. So it's a technique that it's used in order to arrive to parts of the jet that are more perturbative and are better defined theoretically. Okay, and this is what's called mass drop or soft drop. And essentially what it consists on is to find a pair of prongs that satisfy this condition, so that the momentum carried by the subleading prong is greater than something, I don't know, for instance, greater than 10% of the energy of the pair. Okay, so a sufficient hard prong. And this is the mass drop tagger. Dynamical grooming is a more recent way of selecting emissions or splittings within the jet, and the algorithm is described there. And the difference compared to the soft drop grooming is that you really scan the whole jet tree. You go through all the different splittings, and then you find the splitting that maximizes a given quantity, for instance, K. And K, when you put A equal to 1, really corresponds to the transverse momentum of the splitting, so the scale of the process. The interesting thing is that grooming, you can always draw the grooming or the selected splittings in the Lund plane as sections of it. So groomed splittings are always a subsample of the splittings that you obtain when you decluster. So the beauty of the Lund plane is that what you expect from the theory, and what you expect from the theory is something that's very simple. So the QCD probability has this form here. So its natural variables are the log of KT and the log of the inverse of the angle. So that essentially the probability of a QCD splitting is flat on these quantities, except for the running of the coupling. So at leading order, what you expect is that this thing is filled homogeneously. And then you simply see different horizontal bands that correspond to different intensities set by the coupling, okay? So that's why here in this Pythia diagram, what you see is that a very intense band at low values of KT, which are non-perturbative splittings, so very low scale splittings. And those are the ones that are more frequent. And then as you increase KT, as you move upward in the Lund plane, then you see that the splittings are harder and rarer, okay? And this is simply the running of the coupling that's dictating this. So of course, in the real life, beyond leading order, there are many more effects that contribute, and the plane will have inhomogeneities, and it won't be something that's flat. But at least this is the simple baseline, and the Lund plane can be calculated to fixed order, systematically improvable, and then there are calculations of it, and currently it's being used as a tagger and also as an observer. So the primary, this will go very quick because I'm sure that also Lara has told you about the Lund plane, that the measurement that she led in Alice. So I think that there's not need to insist much, but just to show you the two measurements that currently exist of the Lund plane in the LHC. One is the measurement of Atlas that focuses on very high PT jets, so jets of more than 600 GeV or so. This is represented in a slightly different way. So instead of log of KT, it's expressed as log of 1/set. So essentially in this representation, KT is not a horizontal line, but KT are diagonal lines. So a diagonal line here is harder. KT, a diagonal line here, as you move upward, it's softer, KT. And essentially what you see in this plane is again, the running of the coupling. And this is real measurement. You see a relatively homogeneous region here that's populated, yes, almost flat in this region. And this corresponds to perturbative emissions. And here you can clearly see the band at fixed low KT, which is due to hadronization, essentially, okay? And the interest of this Lund plane is precisely that you can, in principle, separate different regions of the phase space, inspect them, and constrain the physics that populate those regions of the phase space. And here they have made some examples of the different physics that populate the different corners. So hadronization, as we said, matrix elements, or really like next to leading emissions that populate the very high KT range, aspects of the Barnum shower, et cetera, et cetera. But it's rather beautiful, the fact that from hadrons, you can really access something that you can really access some fundamental QCD feature, which is the running of the coupling. And these are some examples of.
Ask a question.
Please.
So in the very left, the larger plane plot, you have this peak down the bottom right, but on the right side, you have part-time shower where it peaks on the bottom left. Why don't you have that in the left side? Why don't you have a part-time shower on the left? In the big one?
So I think those are different scales, first of all. So it's not the different scales. And this is data, and these are Monte Carlo. So I mean, you cannot compare them directly. These are simple Monte Carlo illustration of the different ingredients that are. So I think that.
So you're saying it's in there, but it's not as black as the very top right corner there. So there's something in there, but it's in the data, but it's not only the parton shower, which you see in the simulation.
Yes, I think you cannot consider this as a sum of these contributions.
Yeah, okay,
I mean,
you have to weight it. Yeah.
Yes, there's a different interplay. But in general, this region here should be the simplest, and then should have contributions. Yes, right. From here and from there.
What is the matrix element? I don't know.
So matrix element is precisely that. Instead of considering like adding in your Monte Carlo, adding MATLAB, adding like a.
But this is per jet, right? So whether I get 2 jets or 3 jets.
No, but this has to be inside. So this is an extruding emission that falls inside your jet.
Oh, inside the shell.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If it falls outside, then it doesn't modify.
Right. Then it's another jet.
Yeah. Okay, so these are 2 examples of how this Lund plane is useful and are being used in order to constrain calculations. This is a one-dimensional projection of the Lund plane onto the angle axis on the left, and you see it compared to different Monte Carlo calculations. And you see how in the small angle region, there are discrepancies between hadronization models like Herwig and Sherpa, and how the large angle region can be used also in order to test things related to the pattern shower, like ordering variables, etc. And this is an example of the existing calculation with a 5% order precision at high KT. Okay, so just an example. And this is the measurement that you must know that Laura did in ALICE in a different kinematic regime. So here I will go quite quickly. So instead of 600 GeV, this is jets of 20 to 120. So you can imagine that this is heavily overwhelmed by non-perturbative effects. And this was also a systematic comparison to Monte Carlo that was performed. And again, you can see how the Lund plane can be looked at in the soft or harder small angle or wide angle region. And then how some tensions appear with the different calculations, etc. So another proof that the declustering is given access to salient features of the pattern shower, so to the building blocks of PQCD, are the measurements of the splitting function. So the splitting function is the QCD kernel. So the probability that a gluon emits a gluon that carries a fraction set of its energy. Okay. And since this is a splitting kernel, it has no momentum dependence. And measurements, I could have picked up the star measurement, sorry, but this was just the first thing I found. This is an ALICE measurement of the splitting function for different jet radii. You see that you start getting differences in the low set regime. So these are non-perturbative effects that contribute at the load set G. And this is, a calculation also compared to CMS open data. And the thing to notice is that you measure the splitting function and you see this universal 1/set. So really you're proving QCD. And then other measurements that can be done that are again selections of the Lund plane, like the hardest KT that you find, the dynamical grooming measured by ALICE and NPP, and then existing calculations. So you can access fundamental things that can be calculated, and there are interesting applications. So now that I've introduced you to the Lund plane, and you see what it is, so it's if you wish, it's like a language that allows us to access proxies of gluon emissions in a pattern shower. Now let's try to use it in order to uncover another fundamental part of the game, which is the role of the quark mass. Here we need to talk about the dead cone effect. The dead cone effect is a quantum phenomena by which, if you have a quark massive that radiates, there's a region of the phase space defined by a cone, defined by the ratio of its mass and its energy, where radiation cannot occur. Okay, and simple parametric relations. If you take your calculation of the single gluon emission from a heavy quark, and you divide it by the single gluon emission by a light quark, you will see that the difference is essentially something that comes from the propagator that has this cutoff that again, it's the dead cone angle, and it's defined by the ratio of the mass and the energy. And if you plot this ratio, putting in masses, you can make the exercise. You see that there are parametrically great differences between B's and D's and B's and inclusive on light quarks at small angles, just parametrically. So this, the fact that we've learned how to decluster the jet and access this gluon proxies opens the window to really try and select heavy quark splitting directly and look at its angle. Okay, but before I say that, sorry, I have to say that the dead cone has very clear indirect consequences. The first indirect consequence is that if you suppress emissions, then you would have simply less particles inside your jet as compared to light quark jets. So you will have lower intrajet multiplicities, and also the fragmentation will be harder. So if you radiate less, then the leading quark will simply carry more energy than the leading quark in a light quark jet. So experimentally, measuring the dead cone has been challenging because of several things. First is that the heavy flavor particles decay, and if they decay, the decays can create extra radiation at small angles, and this obscures the dead cone in general. Hadronization can obscure dead cone also. And there is another problem, which is what is the way, or with respect to what do you measure the jet cone? You have a jet maybe with a heavy flavor hadron inside it, and then you want to measure suppression of particles, but with respect to what? The direction of the jet? Well, yes, I mean, that could be a way, or the direction of the heavy flavor hadron. That could be a way, but one can do better now that we have the tools. And then a way of doing that better is to actually do the declustering of your jet. And what you do is you have your jet with a heavy flavor hadron, and then you proceed with the Cambridge-Jackman declustering. And at each step, you follow the prong that contains the heavy flavor hadron. So when you are mapping the splittings at each declustering step, it's like mapping emissions from an evolving heavy flavor quark. And this is a Monte Carlo example where with Pythia, you make the Lund plane for inclusive jets, for D jets or for B jets. And simply by eye, you can see that the angle range is much more limited for B jets. You see that inclusive jets, they tend to populate the very small angle more easily, right? Just by eye. So one can try and represent this in a more clever way and represent the Lund plane, but in a more targeted way, which is considering the energy of the splitting. So the energy of the sum of the two prongs at each declustering step, and this is what we call the energy of the radiator. And if you think about it, the radiator represents simply the energy of the heavy flavor quark at each declustering step. Okay. So it's a way of looking at the splitting angle as function of the energy of your heavy flavor quark. And in this diagram here, this is a relative difference of B jets and light quarks. You can see something that's quite interesting. This line here in red represents the relation that represents the dead cone limit. So mass of the B divided by the energy of the quark. And you see that Pythia, this is just Monte Carlo, is behaving very well because this deep blue here is the area where there are no gluons emitted. So beyond, or for angles smaller than the dead cone, Pythia does not have any emitted gluons. So also this plot makes you understand something, and this something is that the dead cone is an effect that is happening at moderate angles if the energy of the quark is very small. But if you go to energies of the quark that are very large, then the dead cone will happen at ultra small angles that are perhaps not reachable experimentally. Like here, this is very, very few radians. So if you want to probe the dead cone, you want to be able to probe radiator energies or subjet energies that are low, okay? So as I said, the idea consists on iteratively decluster the jet with a fully Rico D0 prong, follow the prong that contains the D0 at each step, and then register the energy and the KT at each step, and define the ratio, simply the distribution of emissions in the D0 jets and the distribution of emissions in inclusive jets, and you make a ratio, okay? And what we will see is that the deepest levels of the jet tree are the splittings that happen at the smallest angles, and then you are very sensitive to the mass. So quickly, the experimental details, what we did is we consider a specific decay channel of the D0, which is, I mean, reasonably probable, like in the K5, a 4% branching ratio. And Alice can do good down to a very low PT and of the Ds. And we reconstruct the invariant mass peak of these candidates. And we looked at the Lund plane under the peak. So for potential signal, this is what you see on the left-hand side. And then we looked at the sideband, which represents background. So like random combinations of K-pies. So that really don't belong to a D. And this would be the background of our measurement. And then we standardly subtract the background from the signal, normalizing by the area in order to obtain our signal Lund plane. Okay, these are details of the measurement that maybe we can skip. But here are the Lund planes for D-jets, sideband subtracted. This is the Lund plane for inclusive jet. And then what we are going to do, as I've described, is we are going to project the Lund plane onto the splitting angle for both D-jets and inclusive. And we're going to make a ratio, and we're going to see that for D-jets, the low splitting angles are strongly suppressed. Before that, we are going to clean up a little bit the non-perturbative effects. And this again is the advantage of speaking the Lund plane language, because simply by introducing a horizontal cut, we can require the splittings to be of KT of the order 2 times lambda QCD. And like this, we remove a lot of non-perturbative trash. And we are even more sure that the splittings that our algorithm is given us are connected to gluon emissions or better connected to gluon emissions in the pattern shower. And this is the main result of our analysis. So this is the ratio, again, of the splitting angle distributions for D-jets and inclusive jets in different bins of irradiator, which was, if you recall, proxy for the energy of the quark, of the heavy quark, from 5 to 10, from 10 to 20, from 20 to 35 GeV. The shaded areas in the plot correspond to the expected dead cone effect for the given mass of the C quark. And the dashed lines correspond to the no dead cone baseline. So what is the no dead cone baseline? It's simply the ratio of light quark over inclusive quarks. And it's not one because unfortunately, we do have a lot of gluons in our sample. Actually, it's pretty much dominated by gluons in our sample. So our no dead cone baseline is sensitive to the difference in the quark and gluon fragmentation. And that's why you see here some increase in trends. And this is the flow of making a measurement which consists of inclusive jets as a reference. Ideally, what you would do is to have a ratio of B jets over D jets. In both cases, you have quarks, okay? And then clearly in that case, the no mass reference would be netly at 1. Here we have to consider that, and okay, this is our reference. So we believe that we are proving the Q to Q gluon splitting. It follows the right parametrical trends, And yeah, this is the comment that I had to do on the baseline reference. And this is what I said. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to do B to D ratios to have an unambiguous baseline, but also to get rid of another problem, which is to have they are linked actually, to have identical color factors in your numerator and the denominator. So if you see an effect, you know that these are not color factors, but are purely mass effects, okay? And that this is a projection for Alice during run 3 with fully reconstructing Bs and D mesons. And you see that here there are brutal effects that can be used to constrain calculations, and with significant sensitive to mass. So that one will be able to do differential studies in the near future. So one comment.
Can I ask a question there?
Please, please.
Why is the large KT showing the largest effect in the ratio?
The largest KT.
So KT greater than 2 times lambda QCD, the blue markers, right?
Is a blue marker, yes.
Why do they have the largest? I thought the more KT phase space you include, the larger the.
I think hadronization spoils always the dead cone. So you have to clean up in order to see it. And this is good news, because if hadronization would be creating dead cone, then would be in trouble, because probably 2 times lambda QCD is not enough to get rid of.
I see. So you're saying hadronization smears out the radiation such that they fall inside the dead cone.
Exactly. So you need to go more perturbative in order to see it more clearly.
Okay.
So yes.
Cool.
Yeah,
thanks.
That's the thing. So one point that I want to make, because I think this is important, and for instance, now myself that I am CMS and I see the tools that they have for B tagging and that are amazing, and they use complicated things in order to reconstruct multivariate machine learning in order to B tag. So I think that for substructure measurement, of course, if you do B tagging, then you will benefit enormously on the statistics, because yeah, fully reconstructing a B meson, it's hard statistically. But the problem is that when you do B or C tagging, you just guess that this is a jet produced by a B, but the decay products of the B hadron are going to be there in your jet. And they are going to distort your jet tree, and they are going to distort it in a very bad way. And this is an example that we did. This was Katarina, a student in Alice, who made this little study where you see this is again this is again ratio of splittings in heavy flavor in B jets relative to inclusive. And if you look at the red line, you see what happens when your B hadron is undecayed. So really, with PTI, you don't allow it to decay, okay? And then you see the strong suppression at small angles very, very clearly, and also here. However, if you, in orange, if you let the B hadrons decay and do whatever they want, I mean, they can go to hadrons, but they can also go leptonically with neutrinos, etc. Then you see what is happening. You see no effect. The orange line really shows no suppression with respect to, and if you do something else, which is consider the splittings in your tree that do contain decay prongs, then you see that those are precisely the ones that are contributing at small angles, and they're spoiling the business. So unless you define a way to reintegrate your decay prongs from B-tag jet, for substructure, I'm not sure if this is going to be very useful if you want to be sensitive to mass. So I think it's something that it's worth keeping in mind.
Wait, I'm confused.
Yeah.
So blue plus red equals green? No, blue plus red equals orange.
Blue plus red goes orange. Yes.
So the decay once again breaks the dead cone and falls inside.
Yes, yes, okay. Because you have, the decay creates extra splittings at small angles, and those are not QCD splittings; they are just decay.
No, wait, it's post hadronization.
Exactly.
So there's no angular ordering.
Nothing. So then they really polluted.
Right.
Yeah,
Got it. But is this supposed to be like some kind of a weighted sum? Because if it's just like blue plus brown, I don't see how we get orange. You have to have some kind of weight.
So these are relative differences. So now that I'm saying I don't recall the detail, but these are ratios. So this is something divided by inclusive. So okay, I don't know how this is added exactly.
There's some weighting.
There's some, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, but this is the point that I wanted to make about the tagging. And now, yeah, so at this point, I think we see more or less that the declustering PP is a very good opportunity. I mean, many of us are here, are working with this idea in mind, that we can access salient features of the Parton shower. And now the question is, or the question's been in the last years, how can we use that in order to characterize the modifications induced by the quark gluon plasma to the jet in heavy ion collisions. In general, this is again a very active area of research. Rahab knows very well. Here, I'm not going to discuss everything that we are now doing with substructure in heavy ion collisions, but just focus a little bit on the mass with a few comments on the quark mass. I need to tell you that in heavy ion collisions, the Lund plane is not as simple as the Lund plane in proton-proton collisions, because what happens at a jet that propagates through the quark gluon plasma will be modified by the quark gluon plasma, and the mechanism or the mechanism that we believe is dominant is the medium-induced emission of soft gluons. Okay, so this is a kind of a gluon stratum induced by the free color sources in the quark gluon plasma. And this gluon stratum is not like vacuum radiation. So it's not going to populate the Lund plane in a flat way, if you want, a leading array. It follows different rules. And our work experimentally is trying to understand how this medium radiation populates the plane and how to understand how this correlates with the different scales that appear in the problem. So I'm not going to go into detail, but you can imagine that there are different scales. The first obvious one is the medium length, right? In vacuum, there's no notion of time or length, but in medium, you have a fixed medium length that the jet traverses. So what happens to the jet can change. I mean, a splitting inside a medium must be different than a splitting that happens outside the medium, okay? So this is the main scale, but there are also other quantum effects like color coherence, which is defined as a vertical line here. So multiple types of emissions, decohere inside the medium, the decohere outside, and this is what we're trying to understand. And there's one parameter, this famous Q hat, which dictates most of this scale. The thing is that in heavy ion collisions, heavy ion collisions are complex systems because you don't have a single jet, you have a order 100 in your event. So you will have a huge uncorrelated background. And this is shown in this simple Monte Carlo exercise where you take Pythia and then you embed it into a lead event. And then you look at the difference of the Lund plane. And the difference of the Lund plane shows an enhancement of large angle splittings due to the uncorrelated background. And this is easy to understand. If you have lots of uncorrelated background around, and if you're going to then build a jet tree, you will get a lot of splittings that are really not associated to a true emission. They are simply due to the soft particles from the uncorrelated event, okay? And this will happen where there's more area to aggregate momentum, and where there's more area to aggregate momentum is in the region of the large angles with respect to the jet axis, okay? So this is what you see here. We have a lot of underlying event at large angles. There are other ingredients like medium response that we think that might be there. So the jet goes through the medium and then it excites the medium, and then some part of this medium goes with the jet. And this is an irreducible background that you cannot get rid of. And this is going to enter also at large angles in the same way here. And then we might want to look at this area here, which is the area of very small masses, okay? The good news, I think, is that the very small masses here are not going to be strongly modified by the uncorrelated background or other effects, because those are affecting the tree at large angles. So this is a region that is going to be relatively clean. And if you find the right groomer, and if you are clever enough to find a way to select this area, you might be very sensitive to the jet mass without much problem. And there are many ideas in that direction that need to be explored. And we want to see whether this medium-induced radiation is going to fill the dead cone. This is an open question. We are not very sure. Theorists seem to say that medium-induced radiation can fill the dead cone. If it's so, it's very interesting because it's also a way to isolate medium-induced radiation. So you have a region of the phase space where you know that vacuum emissions are not happening. So whatever you find there, if you're sure that it's not background, it's going to be medium-induced radiation. So you can also characterize it. So it's a win-win situation to look for these mass effects. So if it's empty, it's interesting. If it's filled, it's also interesting in a way. So there are currently recent measurements of jet suppression. And I think I see this in the same way I see previous measurements of the dead cone in PP. So they are kind of indirect measurements that are still not very targeted, because often color is mixed with mass and it's hard to disentangle. In the middle, you see the RAA or the nuclear modification of D jets and inclusive jets. I mean, these things happen somehow. The jet radii with which they measure, it's different. I hope, I mean, I guess this will change. There are some hints that the D jets in the region that they overlap are less suppressed. This is an example by Atlas of the B jet over inclusive suppression. It seems that B jets could be less suppressed than inclusive jets. There's an obvious step that Atlas could have taken, but they did not, which is to do B jet over gamma jet on the right, because you know gamma jet biases towards light quark jets. So then if you compare B jets with light quark jets, then you can factor out color factors and then be more sensitive to the mass and see whether there's something going on there. But again, the jet radii is not the same. So this is not apples to apples. But here you can see also this is a quite beautiful result, because you can see that inclusive jets here in red are more suppressed than gamma jet events. So, and this could be simply the difference between gluons and quarks. Okay, so I think I've reached the end. I wanted to tell you about these relatively new techniques, why it's an unuseful language, why the Lund plane is a prominent example of a useful substructure variable, that with it we can expose fundamental properties of QCD, like mass, like the dead cone. There are other very interesting things like color flow that I had not discussed. In heavy ion collisions, jet substructure is used to characterize the medium-induced radiation, and there's a plethora of results over RIC and LHC. Still, many things need to be clarified and understood. This was not discussed here. And mass dependence of jet-medium interaction is still an open question, and there's clearly now a great opportunity to do similar things that we've done in PP in heavy ion to try to isolate mass effects. Yeah, that's it. I don't know if I was well on time or too early.
Perfect.
You were
Yeah.
perfect. Perfect, yeah. All right, yeah, thanks, Leticia, for the very nice talk. Do we have questions? But of course, I can't see, so someone who is there.
Thanks for the nice talk. So I guess I have a basic question on the mechanism of the dead cone effect. So you said it's basically coming from the dependence of mass in the propagator. So that's 1/p² plus m² for the propagator. But I guess the p² dependence shows up in the radiator dependence of the cone effect. So where does the radius dependence, collinear emission gets suppressed and large angle emission doesn't get suppressed? Where does that come from? Like in terms of the calculation.
In terms of the calculation.
Like why does the collinear emission get suppressed, not the larger angle emission?
Maybe you go
I
to
don't understand.
slide that had the equation.
Yes.
That one.
I have it here.
This one.
Yeah. So this is a cutoff, and this cutoff.
I think she's asking where this. So that's really your question. You see, MQ over EQ is theta Q. That's the definition.
So mass over energy is really angle.
Oh, okay.
You see?
Okay.
So mass, yes, exactly. So mass over energy is parametrically angle.
Can I just ask another question? I think you said like there's a specific angle where it can't be radiated within, but it says suppressed there. Is it just that there's less radiation within the cone, or that there's a certain cone that you can't have radiation?
I think it's totally dead. I don't think it's a smooth thing or so. I think it's just a bedded region. Yeah. So for your problem is how, your problem is how mass over energy.
Right, I guess like in the denominator of the propagator, you like pull out a factor of e square, and then the rest is 1 plus this theta square, and then that's where this dependence comes from.
I think so. I think so. I can give you the reference to this paper, and then they do it really, you see exactly how, well, you see it here. So you can see precisely how they extract this parametric dependence, how this goes into the numerator. And
I have another question.
Please.
So in terms of the jet clustering, why is it, or I don't understand why you like first clustered it with anti-KT and then decluster and then recluster with a different algorithm. So what's the point of that? So,
yes, today also a theory colleague asked me the same question. There's no real reason in PP. In principle, you could do Cambridge-Aachen jet finding, and that's it. In PP, this is just an operational reason. For instance, in experiments like, I don't know, CMS or Atlas, perhaps not so much in Alice or Star, where we derive, I guess, by hand or jet energy scale corrections. But anti-KT jets are default and are pre-calibrated, and this is what you get. So then it's very easy to just get those jets with the given corrections and use them as default. And the theorists have shown that the effects of using a different algorithm to decluster result only on some logarithms at the borders of the jet. So analytically, there's no impact on this choice. So to say, for a theorist, it can be calculated the same, except some annoying logs maybe at the large angle region of the phase space. In heavy ions, though, there is a reason why you want to use anti-KT, because anti-KT is more resilient than Cambridge-Aachen to the underlying event. So using anti-KT algorithm to get your signal is convenient, and it's a default in all the experiments for this reason.
So can you do the clustering and reclustering both with anti-KT?
But the thing is that so so anti-KT is a non-physical metric, in the sense that if you look at the algorithm, it doesn't cluster particles according to some QCD-inspired law. So it produces jets that are very conveniently circular and that are soft, resilient, and so on. But the jet tree that you get from the anti-KT is not physical. If you look at the Lund plane for anti-KT, we did look at the beginning, and it gives something very, very, very different. So if you want to decluster your jet, and then create a jet tree that is physical from which you're going to extract proxies from the gluons. You want to use Cambridge-Aachen because of the angular ordering. And at leading order effect, even if you use KT, it could also work because KT, combines according to the inverse probability of QCD. So that will work. But anti-KT declustering is useless with the physics purpose. They're not angular order, for instance.
It's more useful if you just want to know the initial parton, but not
the energy of the jet. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question about the combining algorithm?
Yes.
So if you're using QCD principles to like choose which particles you recombine, is one of those that you're like, basically like the splittings that you're allowing, would it have to include this dead cone effect if you're taking into account QCD? Does that like bias the data at all?
So sorry, say it again.
So like the splittings you're choosing to recombine, right? If you're saying that below a certain angle, like it's just not physically possible, and you're taking into account these QCD effects, like you would not choose splittings that are within that angle. So does that bias the data that you're feeding in to see the dead cone effect at all?
No, because the Cambridge-Aachen, for instance, does not include any mass ordering. It's purely an angular ordering. And for sure, your jet tree with Cambridge-Aachen would have splittings that are non-perturbative and that are happening small angles. And this is what you want to clean up. And that's why you apply a KT transverse momentum scale to get rid of all the crap that Cambridge-Aachen might have created at low transverse momentum.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question about the dead cone and the heavy ions.
Yeah.
So I guess in my head, I always thought that the medium response is of course also a problem, but that the going to low enough like radiator energies would additionally be like kind of an intractable thing in heavy ions. Does this present a like big challenge, or does the medium response totally dominate that?
Yeah, no, maybe I was too optimistic when I said, because indeed, so the small angles, I mean, they allow you to get rid of fake prongs, but they don't allow you to get rid of smearing by the heavy ion background.
So you still need to unfold.
You still need to unfold, and then the corrections will be probably wild. So, I mean, that then enters the game. You need to see.
Are there any questions from outside for us?
There's no one with their hand raised.
I can ask.
Go ahead, Hannah.
I have that's related to my previous question. For the medium response, you were saying that this is like an irreducible background, but isn't it somewhat a part of the signal in some sense too? Because this does tell you about how jets are, I guess it depends on how you define the signal.
Yes.
But isn't it also useful in the sense that it kind of is a part of the jet itself in heavy ion? I mean, it's a difficult question to answer, but.
I mean, I think it is. I mean, and it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
I mean, if you talk to some theorists, they will tell you, yes, characterizing the jet medium response is the primary interest. If you ask me, my modest opinion is that if I can get rid of the medium response, the better, because medium response is non-perturbative and is subject to modeling. So I think if we want to learn something, perhaps we want to try first to look at the better defined areas. And if we can escape from it by looking to small angles, better. But for sure, medium response is a part of the signal that you might want to, understand.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Yeah. Okay. So with the idea of going to the smaller angles with the heavy flavor Lund plane, I guess in doing that, do you think of it as maybe like some sort of grooming technique that does that, or just like at the end, a cut on the angle? Do you know, like, because I guess that there's a difference between that, right?
If I what? Say it again.
Like, do you like the idea of going to small angles in heavy ion collisions for the heavy flavor tag jets? Like, are you thinking of that as like using a particular grooming that would help do that, or just the cut on the angle after the fact?
No, particular grooming, because cutting the Lund plane won't work, because if you have to cut it, then you have to unfold it first, and we know that it's not going to be possible in that, right?
Yep.
I do have, I think I have a great idea for a groomer.
Yeah, I was wondering if you, that was going to be my next question is, do you have an idea of what groomer would accomplish this? Yeah.
Yes, I can tell you in private. Yeah, we are working
okay. Sorry.
Their ways, yeah.
Cool.
So I have like a somewhat random question. When you talk about the Lund plane and therefore there was one slide where you show like there are three like different mechanisms in Monte Carlo that adds up back to like,
in the first slide, this
yeah, the one that Don was asking about, yeah. So here are these three like only possible to be distinguished in Monte Carlo stuff because we know where each stuff is coming from? Or is there a way in experiment that we can actually try to disentangle them from each other and basically like, you know, go from the last block of the data and then put like, you know, set them aside in three parts and go back to these three plots in real data? Is there a way to do that?
Yes. So I think that the way is kind of look, I mean, this is an example, right? Here you are cutting the Lund plane, right? Okay. So for instance, there, where, for instance, let me choose the right place. So for instance, look there, small angle, and then this is softish, no? You might expect that there hadronization effects are playing a role. And then you see that precisely there are big differences between the Monte Carlos. So then this is an opportunity to tune your Monte Carlos in that sense. Is this what you're asking? So the Lund plane allows to really isolate because we know where different effects contribute in the Lund plane. So you can cut here, cut there, and
then you are just making a geometric cut on your plane itself to try to disentangle like the different physics.
Yes,
right?
yes. Because you don't want to compare to Monte Carlo in a region where all effects contribute. And you cut your plane in regions where you think that mostly one will contribute. And this is an opportunity that you can, if you have both variables, the scale and the angle.
Okay, I was trying to say if there's like way to the other way around, but yeah, this geometric argument is probably like one of the most, like one of the important reasons why you want to do it. So yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. We can clarify later if we were not talking the same.
Maybe.
I just have a small, qualitative question, and I guess it's piggybacking on this comment that Raja was making about the actual hadronization effects on the TED cone. I guess like you're saying that the hadronization effects actually populate the cone. Is this what actually happens?
Yes. Hadronization contributes everywhere.
Sure.
And then of course it also contaminates small angles.
So I guess like because the hadronization effects go beyond just the dead cone, it's a little bit difficult to, I guess, like backwards disentangle these hadronization effects from the cone to try to actually figure out what the actual dead cone was prior to hadronization.
But hadronization you can cut it off.
Okay.
So that's the thing, If and this is pretty unique on the Lund plane because the Lund plane, or because you really have access to the KT, the relative transverse moment in the splitting is really the scale of the process. So it's what goes inside alpha S if you want so this is what dictates the perturbativeness. So if you cut at 2 GV, then you're pretty sure that you don't have hadronization effects. So it's a simple way. Then of course, if you cut KT, the problem is that the plane has this triangular shape. So if you want to go more perturbative, then you also start not being sensitive to small angles because very hard splittings are also very wide angles in general. So that's why you need to find, in order to, so the Lund plane is triangular. So if you make a horizontal cut at 5, for sure, you know that there, if you run this at pattern level and at hadron level, it will perfectly coincide in that corner of phase space. But then you see that the angle reach that you have is here, 1.5, so large angles, So if you want to be sensitive here, you need to get a little bit dirty. So, you know.
Are there any other questions? Are there any questions outside, Laura?
Nope. Okay.
And maybe we can thank Leticia again.
Okay, thanks you all.
And thanks in addition for talking to everybody basically constantly today.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun. No, thanks
it
to
really
you.
enriches our experience.
Thanks to you.